When an arrogant influencer tried to humiliate Clint Eastwood for some easy views in a charity gala, she never expected Barron Trump to step in. What happened next didn't just destroy her reputation. It showed millions why legends earn their respect through decades of impact, not viral posts and empty words. But before we dive in, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Now let me take you to a night that changed how many young influencers think about Hollywood legends. It was during one of those glittering charity events in New York, where old Hollywood royalty mingles with the new generation of social media stars, the kind of place where every conversation could become tomorrow's headline, and every phone could capture a career-defining moment. Clint Eastwood stood near the center of the room, commanding respect without saying a word. At 93, he carried himself with the same quiet dignity that made him a legend. His presence alone told stories of an era when actions spoke louder than tweets, and respect wasn't something you demanded, but earned. Not far away, 18-year-old Barron Trump observed the room with characteristic thoughtfulness. Though young, he carried himself with a maturity that often surprised people. Growing up in the spotlight had taught him the value of careful observation and measured responses. But there was another force in the room that night, a social media influencer with millions of followers, known for her provocative takes and brutal honesty. She moved through the crowd like a shark sensing blood in the water, her phone perpetually raised, hunting for content that would set her feeds on fire. When her eyes landed on Clint, a smirk crossed her face. She raised her phone, ready to serve her millions of followers what she thought would be the perfect viral moment, mocking a Hollywood legend. Little did she know her next few words wouldn't just backfire. They would spark a confrontation that would stun millions. And when Barron Trump stepped in, well, let's just say she wasn't ready for what happened next. The influencer's voice cut through the elegant atmosphere like nails on a chalkboard. "Oh my God, you guys won't believe who's here," she whispered dramatically into her phone, her eyes gleaming with a malicious intent. "Look at this fossil over here. Why do they still invite people like this? I mean, wasn't he, relevant in the 1800s? Her followers immediately began flooding her live stream with laughing emojis and comments. Emboldened, she zoomed in on Clint Eastwood, her commentary growing bolder with each passing second. "Seriously, look at him. He probably doesn't even know what TikTok is. This is what's wrong with Hollywood. They can't let go of the past. We need fresh blood, not these ancient relics taking up space." A small crowd had gathered around her, some uncomfortably shifting their weight, others pulling out their own phones to capture what was unfolding. The influencer, thrilled by the attention, continued her performance. "You know what's sad? He probably thinks he's still relevant. Like, sweetie, the world moved on. We don't need these outdated stories about cowboys and tough guys anymore. We need fresh voices, diverse perspectives, not some old white guy who peaked before the internet existed." Clint Eastwood, ever the professional, maintained his dignified composure. His face remained impassive, though something flickered in his eyes. Not anger, but perhaps a quiet disappointment that spoke volumes more than any outburst could. The influencer mistook his silence for weakness. "See? He's not even defending himself. Probably doesn't even understand what's happening. This is why we need to—" "Actually," a calm voice interrupted, causing heads to turn, "I think he understands perfectly." Barron Trump had stepped forward, his tall frame casting a shadow over the influencer's ring light. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried the kind of authority that made people lean in to listen. The influencer's eyes lit up with malicious delight. This was getting better than she'd hoped. Now she had two targets. But as she opened her mouth to respond, something in Barron's steady gaze made her pause. This wasn't going to go the way she thought. The influencer quickly regained her composure, turning her phone to capture Barron. Well, if it isn't another relic of the past, aren't you a little young to be playing defender of the dinosaurs?" Barron's response was measured, his voice carrying across the now silent room. "You know what's interesting? You're using a phone worth hundreds of dollars on platforms worth billions to mock a man who helped build the very industry that gives you the freedom to disrespect him." The influencer rolled her eyes. "Oh, please, what did he ever do besides play cowboy and say cheesy lines?" "Let me tell you exactly what Clint Eastwood did," Barron replied, his voice taking on an edge that commanded attention. While you're chasing likes with rehearsed controversy, this man was revolutionizing storytelling. He wasn't just acting in movies, he was reshaping how stories could be told. The influencer scoffed, but her smirk had lost some of its confidence. Whatever, that was like a million years ago. Things are different now. You're right, Barron agreed, surprising her. Things are different now. And do you know why? Because of people like him who weren't afraid to take risks when it actually meant something. When standing up for your art meant more than just posting an edgy comment. He gestured toward her phone. That platform you're using to mock him, it exists because people like Clint Eastwood showed us that entertainment could be both meaningful and successful. He didn't just play cowboys. He showed us that complex stories about morality and justice could reach millions. The crowd had grown larger. Phones recorded silently, capturing every word. But you wouldn't know about any of that, would you? Barron continued, his voice carrying a hint of challenge, because understanding legacy requires something your followers can't give you. Perspective. The influencer's face flushed red. This wasn't the easy target she'd expected. Oh, so you think just because your dad was president and you hung around some old celebrities, you know everything? A small smile crossed Barron's face. No, I don't know everything, but I know enough to understand something you clearly don't. And if you'll let me, I'll explain exactly what that is. The influencer shifted her stance, pointing her phone directly at Barron. You know what you should be ashamed of? Someone your age should be aligning with people who actually want freedom and new values, who fight for inclusion, not defending these outdated dinosaurs. Something changed in Barron's expression. Not anger, but a kind of clarity that made everyone in the room hold their breath. Freedom, he said, his voice carrying a weight that silenced the murmurs. Let me tell you about freedom. While you preach about inclusion from your gated communities and private jets, men like Clint Eastwood were actually breaking barriers in Hollywood. When he insisted on casting diverse actors in his films decades ago, he didn't do it for social media points. He did it because it was right. The influencer's smirk faltered as Barron continued, his words measured and precise. You talk about new values? Clint directed a film about a female boxer when Hollywood said it wouldn't sell. He told stories about racial injustice when it could cost you your career. He fought for creative freedom when studios wanted safe formulas, and he did it all without once having to post about how virtuous he was being. Phones were raised everywhere now, capturing every word as Barron drove his point home. The difference between you and him is simple. He actually changed things. He didn't just talk about change for likes and sponsors. While you're crafting the perfect caption about making a difference, he was actually out there making one. And the truly ironic part? The very platform you're using to mock him exists because people like him fought for artistic freedom long before you were born. The influencer's hand holding her phone had started to shake slightly. I still think... You think, Barron interrupted, his tone firm but controlled, that posting filtered photos and rehearsed controversies somehow makes you more progressive than someone who actually pushed society forward? That your performative activism somehow outweighs decades of actual change? The room was dead silent now. Even the usual background chatter of the event had ceased, and Barron was about to deliver the knockout blow that would make this moment go viral across every social platform. Let me tell you something about Clint Eastwood that your followers might not know, Barron continued, his voice gaining strength. Every time you swipe right on your phone, enjoying the freedom to express your opinions, even the disrespectful ones, you're standing on the shoulders of giants who fought for artistic freedom. And Clint? He's one of those giants. The influencer tried to interject, but Barron wasn't finished. You see that phone in your hand? The one you use to mock people who paved the way for you? Behind every video you post, every trend you follow, there's a legacy of storytellers who proved that audiences were smarter than the industry thought. Clint was one of the first to trust that audiences could handle complex stories, moral ambiguity, challenging themes. He gestured towards Clint, who remained stoically observant. This man didn't just act in movies. He revolutionized how stories could be told. When everyone said audiences only wanted simple good versus bad narratives, he gave us characters that made us think. When studios said certain stories were too risky, he proved them wrong. And he did it all without once having to announce how brave he was being on social media. The influencer's face had lost all color now. But you know what's most ironic? Barron's voice took on a tone of almost pitying amusement. While you're here mocking him for being outdated, you're actually proving just how timeless his influence is. Because right now, millions of young people are watching your live stream on platforms that exist because of the creative freedom he and others like him fought for. He paused, letting his words sink in. The crowd was completely silent, hanging on every word. And here's something that might really shock you. The very concept of going against the grain, of challenging the status quo, that you think you invented, Clint Eastwood was doing that before your parents were born. The only difference is, he did it to make a real difference, not to get more followers. The influencer's phone suddenly felt heavy in her hands, but what happened next would leave her and her millions of followers completely stunned. But you want to know the real difference between you and him? Barron's words cut through the tension. Clint Eastwood never needed to tear others down to build himself up. Every boundary he pushed, every risk he took was to lift the entire industry higher, not to gain followers at someone else's expense. The influencer's live stream comments had shifted dramatically. Her usual supporters were going silent, while new voices were flooding in. Is anyone else feeling really uncomfortable right now? Kids speaking straight facts. Never thought I'd see the day an influencer got schooled by a teenager. But Barron wasn't done. His next words would become the most shared clip of the entire exchange. You know what true influence is? It's not about how many followers you have or how many brands sponsor your posts. It's about the mark you leave on the world long after the cameras stop rolling. Clint Eastwood made films that changed how people think, while you make content that changes how many ads you can sell. The room erupted in gasps and murmurs. Several people had already started sharing clips of the exchange, and Barron versus influencer was trending within minutes. When you're his age, Barron continued, gesturing toward Clint, what will be your legacy? A collection of deleted tweets? A handful of viral moments mocking people who actually built something? Or will you finally understand that real influence isn't measured in likes? The influencer's hand trembled as she lowered her phone. For the first time, she seemed to realize she had become the very thing she accused others of being, irrelevant in the face of genuine substance. As clips of the exchange spread across social media platforms, comments poured in from both generations. This kid just schooled an entire generation on respect. Never saw it this way before, makes you think. Had to replay this 5 times, every word hits different. But what happened next would prove that sometimes the most powerful response isn't a clapback or a viral moment. It's silence. And Clint Eastwood was about to demonstrate exactly why he was a legend. As the confrontation reached its crescendo, all eyes turned to Clint Eastwood, the legendary actor and director who had remained silent throughout the entire exchange. Finally, he spoke. His words, though few, carried the weight of decades of wisdom. "Young man," he said to Barron, his voice carrying that familiar gravelly tone that had commanded attention for generations, "you didn't have to do that." Then turning to the influencer, with an expression that mixed dignity with something almost paternal, he added, "Sometimes the loudest statement is admitting you still have something to learn." The simplicity and grace of his response hit harder than any angry retort could have. Social media exploded. That's how a legend responds. Traditional media outlets began picking up the story. Headlines appeared, "Barron Trump defends Hollywood legend in viral moment." The influencer's sponsors started reaching out to her management team. Her phone buzzed constantly with notifications, but not the kind she was used to. Her followers were dropping by the thousands, while Barron's impromptu defense of legacy and respect was being shared millions of times. But perhaps the most telling response came from other young influencers who began posting their own reflections. Watching this made me think about how we treat legends. Maybe we need to check ourselves before going after people who built the industry we profit from. As the night continued, one thing became crystal clear. Sometimes the biggest influence comes from knowing when to listen rather than speak, and tomorrow would bring a development that nobody saw coming. The following days saw the incident transform from a viral moment into something more meaningful. As Barron's words continued to resonate across social media, a deeper conversation emerged about respect, legacy, and the relationship between generations. Other Hollywood veterans began sharing their own stories of Clint Eastwood's impact on their careers, stories of his quiet mentorship, his fight for creative freedom, and his unwavering commitment to storytelling flooded social media. "Clint gave me my first big break when no one else would," said one actor. "He fought the studio to keep my scene in the movie." Another added, "He taught me that actions speak louder than words." But it was the younger generation's response that truly showed the impact of that night. Young actors and filmmakers started posting about their own experiences with veteran artists, acknowledging the debt they owed to those who came before. "Watching Barron defend Clint made me realize how much we take for granted," wrote one aspiring director. "Maybe we need to stop trying to cancel the past and start learning from it." "This kid understood something that many of us missed," commented another. The influencer remained uncharacteristically quiet throughout all of this. Her usual daily posts stopped. Her podcast episode was delayed. And as clips of the confrontation continued to circulate, something seemed to be shifting in the online conversation about generational divides. Clint Eastwood, true to form, hadn't said another word about the incident, but his silence spoke volumes, especially when contrasted with the noise of social media reactions. It was as if he was teaching one final lesson. Sometimes the most powerful response is no response at all. And then, just when everyone thought the story was over, the influencer did something that nobody expected. A week after the incident, the influencer posted a video that was different from anything she'd ever shared before. No filters, no perfect lighting, just raw honesty. "I've spent the past week thinking about what happened," she began, visibly emotional, her voice cracking slightly. "And I need to say something. To Mr. Eastwood, to Barron Trump, and to all of you." She took a deep breath, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I built my brand on being brutally honest, but Barron Trump showed me what real honesty looks like. It's not about tearing people down for views. It's about standing up for what matters." Then looking directly into the camera, she addressed Clint. "Mr. Eastwood, I disrespected not just you, but everything you represent. I mocked decades of work that made my career possible. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm promising to do better." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Comments flooded in. "This is what growth looks like. Now this is influencing. Admitting when you're wrong, respect earned." When asked about the incident in a brief interview, Barron Trump simply said, "Sometimes the youngest person in the room needs to remind everyone what the older generation taught us. Respect isn't outdated, it's timeless." Clint Eastwood's response? A handwritten note to the influencer that she later shared with permission. It read simply, "The true measure of character isn't never making mistakes, it's what you learn from them." The story could have ended there, but its impact continues to ripple through social media. Whenever someone starts to mock a legacy figure now, comments quickly appear. "Remember what Barron said about standing on the shoulders of giants?" In an age where going viral often means tearing others down, this became something different. A reminder that real influence isn't about followers or likes. It's about the impact you leave on others, the respect you show, and the wisdom to know that every generation has something to teach the next. And that, my friends, is how a single moment of bravery, wisdom, and respect reminded millions of what true influence looks like. Clint Eastwood's silent grace, Barron Trump's powerful words, and even the influencer's ultimate humility taught us all an important lesson. Respect and legacy are earned through impact and understanding, not cheap shots and viral moments. What do you think? How can we strike a balance between honoring the past and embracing the future? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoyed this story, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more moments that make us think, reflect, and grow. Don't forget to hit that bell icon so you never miss an update. And remember, true influence isn't about followers. It's about the legacy you leave behind. See you in the next story.